Marriage. Many people aspire to be married. Many people loathe the idea of getting married. But regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, everyone seems to agree that marriage is important in one way or another. But what is marriage really, and why is it important to society? Stay tuned to find out. In the name of God, I take you to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part. This is my solemn vow. Many a man and woman has spoken these words, or a similar set of words as they stood before friends and family in a marriage ceremony. The congregation claps and applauds as the man kisses the bride and a great celebration follows. However, at the same time, despite the ceremonial regard that every wedding attendee seems to share, when they go home they begin to crack jokes. Everyone knows the famous saying about the 3 rings of marriage.
No one tells you about the 3 rings. There's the engagement ring, the wedding ring, and the suffering.
How can it be that society seems so eager to celebrate marriage on the wedding day, but so ready to criticize it the moment after? Why did the tradition of marriage even start in the first place? These are questions that many people have strong opinions about, but I'm not actually concerned with explaining precisely how marriage came about historically. I'd rather like to focus on why it came about, what its primary purpose really is, and why the decisions you make about it really do matter to your future and the future of those around you. As always, I want to be clear that I support the right of everyone to make their own decisions about the things that pertain to them, including decisions about marriage, sex, and relationships. But when those decisions can have high-impact consequences, it behooves you to give them a little more thought than you would other decisions. To begin with, let's consider a classic problem that our ancestors have been facing for hundreds of thousands of years. We find ourselves living in a cruel and dangerous world. The resources we need to survive are available only in limited quantities, and they require hard work to obtain. Further, like it or not, there are bad people out there ready to violate our rights and do harm to us at a moment's notice in order to satisfy their own needs and desires. But what's worse, regardless of how we individually seek to deal with these issues, we recognize our own mortality. 10 out of 10 people die. But since we're not going to live forever, we have a deep-seated, instinctive desire to reproduce, to create a new generation of persons that will carry on our legacy when we're gone. And well, to get this accomplished, we'll need nothing less than a man, a woman, and lots of unprotected sexual intercourse.
Let's make love, you silly, hairy little man.
I say, hello, Vicar.
But it's not that simple, is it? Maybe we'd like it to be, but in fairly short order, we come to realize that having children isn't as simple as just meeting someone of the opposite sex and getting it on. Unlike some species, human children aren't born prepared to deal with the hazards of life that we previously mentioned. If they're to have any shot at having meaningful lives, there has to be a plan that extends beyond man and woman meet, man and woman get it on. It is here that we realize there are many ways we could go about doing this, and to complicate matters further, we quickly discover that our carnal biological instincts are often in conflict with what wisdom and rational thinking might direct us to do. Acting solely upon their carnal impulses, men often feel the desire to mate with as many desirable women as possible, thereby siring as many strong children as possible. Women, on the other hand, are instinctively much more selective. They can bear far fewer children than a man with multiple partners could, and so they gravitate to one most desirable mate, but always remain prepared to trade up to a more desirable one should one become available. Understanding this, I've often equated sex with food. We need sex. Well, we want it too, but beyond the mere pleasurable aspects of sex, we need it in order to reproduce and carry on our legacy, much as we need food to sustain ourselves and ensure our survival over the course of our lives. But it's not just as simple as eat, survive. A person could, for example, eat nothing but cheeseburgers, pizza, and drink beer for 20 years. This may feel very satisfying, especially while he's eating and drinking. However, 20 years later, such a person is likely to discover that his appetites have left him with a host of problems that will be very difficult, if not impossible, to reverse.
So, Doctor, is Peter healthy?
My goodness, you'll be dead within a month.
What?
So it is with our decisions about sex and relationships. You're certainly free to pursue whatever consensual relationships you'd like to throughout the course of your life, but those decisions have far-reaching consequences that can't be reversed. It's simply not the case that any type of sexual relationship is as good as any other, and more importantly, research very powerfully supports that the relationships we choose to cultivate have profound effects not only on us, but on our children. Only having considered all this background do I think we can really understand how marriage, a permanent contractual relationship between one man and one woman, ever came to be so widely respected and cherished, however difficult it might be for married couples to hold true to their marital vows. All of us want to be happy, but I believe that our ancestors, more so than most people today, understood that the personal happiness of adults wasn't what marriage was about. It was first and foremost about creating a family, built on the husband and wife's desires not only for each other, but to create an environment best suited to sire children and give them the best shot at life they could possibly have. At this point, you may be wondering what I mean when I say a household with one mother and one father is the best environment for children. Well, let's take a look. In 2002, Patrick Fagan, Robert Rector, Kirk Johnson, and America Peterson published a report titled The Positive Effects of Marriage, a Book of Charts. The goal of their research was to determine if there are any significant differences between children and adults who come from homes with a married father and mother, and those that come from out-of-wedlock birth, divorce, single parenting, remarriage, or some combination thereof. The results were astounding. Here are just a few of the statistically significant correlations found. Children raised in homes with a married mother and father were 7 times less likely to live in poverty, 6 times less likely to commit suicide, less than half as likely to commit crime, significantly less likely to have developmental, academic, or social problems, and were both physically and emotionally healthier once they reached adulthood. To quote from the report's introduction, "As social science research data and government surveys increasingly show, the decline in marriage since the 1960s has been accompanied by a rise in a number of serious social problems. Children born out of wedlock or whose parents divorce are much more likely to experience poverty, abuse, and behavioral and emotional problems, have lower academic achievement, and use drugs more often. Single mothers are much more likely to be victims of domestic violence. With the rise in these problems comes high program costs to deal with the effects of the breakdown of marriage." But it's not just this report. In what is often called a landmark study, psychologist Judith Wallerstein followed a group of children who grew up in homes where their parents had divorced from the 1970s to the 1990s. She interviewed these individuals at 18 months, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and finally 25 years after their parents had dissolved the marriage. In the beginning, Wallerstein stated that she had expected that the study would show that children are resilient and capable of recovering from the pain of divorce fairly easily. However, she instead found that even 25 years after their parents' divorce, these children still suffered from fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of conflict, and other psychological problems, all stemming from their parents' divorce. Again, 25 years after their parents ended the marriage. In fact, these observations are not at all new. In 1934, British anthropologist Joseph Daniel Unwin published Sex and Culture, in which he thoroughly studied the sexual norms of 86 different cultures spanning 5,000 years of history. Unwin concluded that those cultures that were the most prosperous were also those that had the strongest commitment to a marriage ethic where a man and a woman are expected to come together and stay together no matter what. In fact, some of the world's most notable empires, such as Sumeria, Babylon, and Rome, all saw their civilizations destroyed around the same time that their culture at large abandoned this marriage ethic in favor of more liberal sexual practices. Now, at this point you might be saying, that's all well and good 2 cents, but correlation doesn't prove causation, and I'm not going to live my life based on abstract statistics. Marriage might be right for some people and not right for others, and you don't realize just how hard it is to live with and stay sexually exclusive with one person for decades. Sometimes it really would be better to just have casual relationships, or for some couples to marry and divorce later, or just live together without a marriage commitment. To this I respond, you are correct. Correlation doesn't prove causation, and I certainly don't think anyone should be forced to live or not live a certain way, provided they aren't violating anyone else's rights. However, I would point out first that if you're going to assert that it was not traditional marriage, but something else that led to the aforementioned positive outcomes, what was it and why? Also, do you make other significant decisions with blatant disregard for hard data? For example, suppose a friend invited you to go skydiving at a certain location, and you learned through your research that more than 90% of people who go skydiving at this location die in the process. I imagine you would be likely to have great hesitation upon learning this, and would like to investigate the matter a little bit further before going. However, would you be comforted if your friend said, "Hey man, you can't live your life worrying about abstract statistics. Who cares what happened to other people who tried this? We have the freedom to make our own decisions, and we shouldn't spoil our fun." Would this, combined with your desire to enjoy life, incline you to ignore the documented facts about your situation? As a final point, I don't deny that marriage is difficult. This is unquestionably true. However, I believe this is also the reason that traditional marriage vows read as they do. Let's review them again. In the name of God, I take you to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part. This is my solemn vow. I believe there's a reason the "until death do us part" line is included in the vows. Namely, it was put there because our ancestors understood that marriage is hard. People have differences, and without a doubt, any two married people will go through tumultuous seasons of life where they are brought to the point that they consider throwing in the towel and ending the marriage. The only thing that can allow a marriage to survive such hardships is an undying commitment to hold true to this promise, no matter what. As a study from the Institute of American Values states, many currently happily married spouses have had extended periods of marital unhappiness, often for quite serious reasons, including alcoholism, infidelity, verbal abuse, emotional neglect, depression, illness, and work reversals. Why did these marriages survive where other marriages did not? The marital endurance ethic appears to have played a big role. Many spouses said that their marriages got happier, not because they and their partner resolved problems, but because they stubbornly outlasted them. With time, they told us, many sources of conflict and distress eased. In summary, my views on marriage can be summed up thusly. Marriage is meant to be a permanent commitment between a man and a woman, where the primary goal is not their own happiness, but the creation of an environment that will be best suited for raising children and giving them their best chance at life in a dangerous world. While taking part in such a commitment undoubtedly means foregoing other pleasures, such sacrifices lead to far greater benefits in the long run, similar to choosing healthy food and exercise over junk food and comfortable living. As a final point, the marriage commitment has nothing to do with a piece of paper issued by the government, and I intend to show in a follow-on video that any state in existence actually has a vested interest in tearing down marriage in the traditional family, not building it up. There are still many questions to be answered, and I intend to do so in future videos, but I want to hear from you. What are your views on marriage? What is it fundamentally, and is it important? Be sure to comment and let me know your thoughts below, as well as like and subscribe. And one more time so that there's not any confusion. I am a libertarian, and I believe that every individual has the right to make their own decisions about sex and relationships, provided no one else's rights are being violated in the process. This is simply my 2 cents, and as you might imagine, you can take it for what it's worth. Thanks everyone for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, as well as hit the bell to receive notifications so that you never miss an upload. And if you're a fan of my channel, please consider supporting me on Subscribestar, Bitbacker, or Patreon to receive special rewards. All links can be found in the About section of my website, my2centsvideos.com.